I went to the Philadelphia High School for Girls. I had to wait a year before Lynn got out of high school. So I looked at the newspaper and I said, I got to get a job. So I saw an ad, MGM distributor in Arch Street in Philadelphia. So I went up there. I have a chutzpah. And to me, I never think of what's going to happen. So I walked in and I got a job. My first job ever was a billing clerk for MGM. You have to know, I never typed. I had the academic course. I didn't know how to take shorthand. I didn't know. Anyway, so I had that for 6 months, and for some reason, everybody liked me. I smiled a lot, and they would help me out. But what I did to that billing, the whole system was totally at whack. But I got away with 6 months, and then Bob Lynch was the president of MGM, and his secretary came to me. My name was Rose Goldman. She said, Rose, she said, do you know how to type? I said, sure. Do you know how to take short? Sure. She said, I've got to go to the hospital tomorrow. I'll be away for a month. Can you take over my job as executive secretary? Can you? I said, sure. I had no idea. And what I would do is I'd come into Lynch's office and I crossed my legs and I took longhand. He thought I did shorthand. Then I would go out and I had my friends who would type it for me. So for another week or so, I faked it. Then one day, Bob Lynch said, Rose, would you like to come for lunch? Dudley Wilkinson is coming from MGM in LA. So I said, fine. So I sat and we went to have lunch and I didn't say one word and I listened. And then we came back to the office. And then Dudley said, I said, you know, Mr. Lynch, I said, no, let's scratch that part out. No, Mr. Wilkinson, you have a problem. He said, what do you mean I have a problem, Rose? I said, you go all around the country looking for talented people. The best singing team in the country is right in Philadelphia. I said, who's that? I said, the Gordon sisters. I took the name of my sister, who was Rochelle Gordon. So I said, why don't you give us a screen test? So he started to laugh. I said, we're really good, because I was so quiet at lunch. And he didn't, who is this kid? So anyway, I came back and I said, you know, Ev, I said, we're going to get a screen test. So she said, forget about it. 2 months later, I got a letter, which I still have, from Dudley Wilkinson. Kids, since you're the best singing team in the country, you have a screen test. Come to New York at a certain time, certain place, and you're going to get your test. Well, anyway, I told my poor sister Lynn. So she says, what have you got? I said, they'll take care of it. They're giving us a test. We're good. I always believed in what we were and what we weren't. So, but she said, we have no music. Well, my sister, Rochelle Gordon, she was very, very talented. And she worked with this one top booking agent, which was a Stan Zucker agency in New York. I think it was on Park Avenue. And he had one of the other agents, Leo Kahn, who was a pianist. And so she asked him, would you play for my sisters? So anyway, he said, fine. So to this day, I have no idea what we did for that screen test. And I always ask Lynn, and she doesn't remember either. Anyway, so we finished, and then we're waiting out in the lobby, and they say, okay, George Skanks wants to see you. He was the head of the Skank brothers. One was in LA, and George Skank was Joe and George Skank. And he said, okay, kids, he says, come in my office. We walked into this office. I never saw anything as big as this. He was sitting at this desk, and he had a big cigar, and his legs were on the desk. He says, okay, kids, how much experience have you had? So he said, a lot. He says, please. He said, look, you're not a Judy Garland. He said, you don't have. He said, but you're two nice, sweet Jewish kids, and there's possibility. I'll tell you what I'll offer you. I've got two propositions. He said, and you got to picture this. These are two kids that didn't know anything. But we said, why not? So he said, okay. He said, I'll send you out to Hollywood, give you $75 a week, but we own you. He said, and we'll make stars out of you. But if we want you to be fat, you'll be fat. If you want to be skinny, you'll be skinny. If your hair has to be purple, fine. But whatever we own you. And I said, Mr. Skank, what is the second suggestion? He said, work all the joints, go all over the country, work the nightclubs, and come back to me in 2 years. So I got up. Mr. Skank, nobody owns us. I said, we're good, we'll be back in 2 years, and then you can make stars out of us. And then, anyway, I still remember that to this day. And my sister Lynn is looking at me, and she said, what are you doing? We came, this is really so funny. So we came out into the lobby, and I said, well, there went the screen test. Why are we here? And then Leo Kahn said, look, kids, he says, you're really good. He said, you come with me. He said, you're coming to my agency. So he took us to the Stan Zucker agency, and he walked into Stan's office. He says, you know, Stan, these kids are great. Do you know that Skank offered them a Hollywood contract and they refused it? He wants them to go around the country and get experience. They want to see them back again. So anyway, and this is another thing with their life. It's been bashert. So I'll never forget Stan Zucker. He said, you know, there's an opening in Fall River, Massachusetts. It's in a month. He says, okay. He says, would you like to do it? He didn't even know that we never even did this in our lives before. So he said, you'll do 2 shows. It's the Highway Casino in Fall River, Massachusetts. And I said, where's the contract?